Hello and welcome to my OWL2020 Week 5 Power Rankings discussion video. In this video I'll be briefly discussing all 20 Overwatch League teams and where I think that they stand right now in the current state of competitive Overwatch. Anyone following my Twitter will notice that I did not include the 5 Pacific teams that have not played in my previous rankings. But now that we've had some more time to digest what hero pools really means for the game, I feel a little more confident bringing those teams back into the fold. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. Moving down one spot from my previous rankings to number 20 are the Boston Uprising. I don't have much to say about Boston. So far they have been exactly the team that we expected them to be, which is to say, one with a permanent residence at the bottom of the standings. With the exception of their match with the Outlaws, they haven't looked remotely competitive in any of their matches, and even in their match against Houston they were incredibly sloppy. The nerves of the rookie players really showed. They are outmatched by just about every team in the league in terms of talent. They don't seem to know when to press their advantages. Their ultimate usage is all over the place. In my opinion, this is a poorly coached team and the only team in the league with absolutely zero chance of making it out of the bottom 5. Dropping all the way to number 19 are the Toronto Defiant. What a rollercoaster ride it's been for Defiant fans. After their match against Philadelphia, obviously it looked like this team was one that we had massively underestimated. However, it has since become clear that that match against the Fusion was something of an overperformance, akin to the Hunters taking Vancouver to Game 5 in Stage 1 of the 2019 season. They have been convincingly dismantled, not just by the Atlanta Reign, who we expected to be a good team, but also by the Houston Outlaws playing their own style. They weren't able to look remotely convincing in a mirror match of the Sombra Doomfist competition, something that was supposedly a strength of theirs. What we are left then is a team that is completely winless against any full strength roster. Their only victory is over the Paris Eternal at the start of the season, and that was when the Eternal were forced to play double main tank compositions. Hanbin wasn't eligible for the starting 6. 19 may seem a little harsh, but I think it's fair given just how poor their recent performances have been. Next down to 18 are the Dallas Fuel. Now the Fuel have been moved down mainly due to other teams being moved up in the rankings. Obviously they have not played since week 1. However, I do suspect that if we had seen them play, they would have found themselves in a similar position on my list. The more I reflect on Dallas, their roster and their coaching staff, the less comfortable I feel about this team in hero pools. Watching them against the Shock and the Valiant, it really felt like there was a reliance on the DPS to carry the team, and on a couple maps they were able to do that. Doha and Decay have really been incredible in the maps that we've seen them play. However, carrying on DPS is very difficult in Overwatch right now. The real carry roles are in the tank and support positions, and combining that with the fact that Decay and Doha are at some point going to be pushed off of comfort picks, I'm worried for this team. We really need to see the synergy of this roster evolve if they're going to be competitive this season, and as I've mentioned previously, that's something I'm not confident the current staff are particularly proficient at nurturing within the team. Obviously time will tell, but for now I think keeping our expectations of the Fuel reserved is reasonable. The Chengdu Hunters are next, shifted down from 15 to 17, like the Fuel mainly by other teams being moved above them. As Chengdu still haven't played, I don't have anything to add over my previous sentiment. I think this team has a very scary looking DPS trio of Yang Xiaolong, Leave and Jinmu, but I have reservations about their tank line and their support line. With that said, this is obviously an incredibly difficult team to predict. The Hunters have always been chaotic, and the added chaos hero pools brings could easily be to their benefit. But until that happens, I am tempering my expectations of this team. falling to number 16 are the Washington Justice. The Justice have been incredibly disappointing lately. The loss against Paris in their first homestand is not something I penalise them for too harshly. Paris is a very dangerous team right now, but it's that reverse sweep at the hands of the London Spitfire that really hurts, as well as a very poor performance against the Boston Uprising. Obviously they did win that match 3-1, but it was painful to watch. It's very surface level analysis of the team, but the Washington Justice really do feel like Corey and the boys a lot of the time, and what I mean by that is if Corey isn't popping off, there's rarely another player who is. Even Corey is finding less and less success on the hit scan role now that he has to contend with the incredible new talent in the league, like Glester and XE, who are often reinforced by far superior tank and support lines. Now, they did have a decent showing against the new Excelsior, but I do have to honestly say I feel that was more the Excelsior playing down than the Justice playing up. Every player on this squad, barring Corey, really needs to improve individually, and the roster as a whole needs to learn to better use their ultimates and to execute on their win conditions. Moving a total of 0 places are the Florida Mayhem. There's a lot I like about Florida. They've really been showing a lot of strategic diversity. Against the Spitfire in week 4, we saw the Sombra Doomfist dive, and Yaki's Doomfist was very enjoyable to watch. Versus Toronto in week 5, they came out and executed a bunker style composition very well, which is not something a lot of other teams were playing. Overall, this team has really been flexing the hero pools of their players. However, we are yet to see the Mayhem secure a win over what I would consider to be a good team. In fact, we are yet to see the Mayhem look competitive against a good team. They've had 2 matches against what I would consider to be good teams, the NYXL and the Fusion, and they were swept 3-0 on both occasions, none of the maps being even remotely close. Until we see Florida step up against that stronger competition, I'm not going to be moving them out of my bottom 5. Moving up 6 spots to 14 are the Houston Outlaws. You finally did it, Houston. You learned the lesson that you seem to need to relearn every single season. Play to your strengths. Moving up 6 spots to 14 are the Houston Outlaws. You finally did it, Houston. You learned the lesson that you seem to need to relearn every single season. Play to your strengths. Luckily for Houston fans, it took the team a lot less time this season to get the memo that forcing a composition your team isn't suited to just isn't going to work. As soon as Dante and Blase were subbed in and the team started playing the dive style with Sombra, Doomfist and Tracer, it looked like a different team. Dante and Blase on the Sombra and Doomfist is actually one of the more competitive duos in the league on paper, and Meko, who has quietly been a mechanically excellent diva in all of the matches the Outlaws have played so far, looked so much more comfortable playing this style, understandably so, as it was a lot more akin to how he played on the NYXL back in 2018. Meanwhile, Muma has found a lot more success on the Winston. He has a very aggressive style which is punishable but works well with how the Outlaws play, and no one needs me to tell them that Jexay has been incredible on the main support role. They crushed Toronto at their own game, and they proved it wasn't a total fluke by sweeping the Paris Eternal, albeit Paris were somewhat ill-prepared. Overall, I'm really happy for the Outlaws. No one likes seeing a team perform consistently poorly, as much as we may joke about it. It's bad for the fans, and it's bad for the league. Going forward, this team seems poised to finally start establishing themselves as a mid-table contender. However, we are yet to see how this team looks when Hero Pools takes away the ability for them to play their style rather than enhances it. There is the concern that if Muma is forced back onto Reinhardt, or the team can't run Blase and Dante on one of their speciality picks, that we may see the Outlaws of old return. I am hopeful, however, that whatever comes, we will never see a Houston Outlaws that forces the meta despite their own strengths ever again. Moving up to 13 are the London Spitfire. London are looking stronger every time we see them, which is a real testament to the pedigree of the coaching staff on this team and the individual talent of this roster. It's really starting to shine through. Callista continues to be incredible on the hit scan. Both Benar and Clestin have had great performances on D.Va, and JMac, who was by far my biggest concern looking at this team in the off-season, has been having some fantastic games, honestly, especially on Reinhardt. I like the way he takes space aggressively, and he's been amazing in the Earth Shredder duels, blocking his opponents and landing his own with really good consistency, though that was against lesser main tanks, to be fair. I'm really excited for this squad going forward, but like the Mayhem, I won't be moving them up too highly until we see them take a win over at least a mid-table team. Moving down 3 spots from the last time I ranked them are the Hangzhou Spark. Hangzhou is a team that I'm growing increasingly concerned about, not only due to the reports of them performing poorly in scrims, but due to the impact we've seen hero pools have. Learning a meta quickly, as the new format demands, is not exactly something the Spark are famous for. Their entire 2019 season, in fact, was defined by a slow progression. The Spark would struggle when a new patch was released, take some time, learn, and eventually they'd start to contest the strongest teams in the league. However, taking time to learn is not something they're going to be able to do anymore. And given how quickly the coaching staff on most teams are moving these days, I'm really concerned about the Spark getting left in the dust, despite the incredible talent on this roster. The Valiant are next at number 11. We didn't see the Valiant play in weeks 3 through 5, and my opinions of them haven't changed. I can't really think of what else to say, so here's... At number 10 are the Seoul Dynasty. Seoul is a hard team to predict. I don't have a great amount of faith in their coaching staff, but I am a believer in the talent and particularly the flexibility of this roster, at least for the most part. Seoul really should be able to play just about anything with the squad they have put together, and the players, for the most part, are very individually talented, so it's hard to imagine them performing too poorly. Obviously, they haven't played yet, so we'll just have to wait and see how things pan out for this team. The Guangzhou Charge are next at number 9. Like the Valiant, they've barely moved. My opinion of them hasn't changed, and they haven't played. So once again, in lieu of actual content, please accept... Falling slightly from my week 4 power rankings to number 8 are the Atlanta Reign. The Reign are a bit difficult to place right now, given that they've only played 1 elite team and 2 bottom teams. Naturally, they looked fantastic when they played Boston and Toronto. In their match against Boston especially, it was great to finally see them run the starting 6 that we were expecting from them. We got to see a lot more of Hawk, and of course Edison debuted, farming Boston players for 3 maps as predicted. The Reign are definitely a very talented and a very flexible team, but I can't justify placing them above the 6 to 9 range when we haven't seen them really push. Dropping a few places to number 7 are the NYXL. New York are another team that so far just hasn't been living up to expectations. While they may be at 3rd place in the standings right now with a 5-1 record, every one of those wins was against the bottom 5 team. The one time they played a top team, the Fusion, they got rolled. With that said, the squad has looked improved in recent weeks, which I attribute to Nene and Libero getting more playtime. I think they are easily the Excelsior's best DPS duo right now, at least until Sabiorbi and Who Are You can both find themselves on comfort picks. Libero, unsurprisingly, was an enormous upgrade over Who Are You on the Mei, and Nene has been significantly more consistent on the McCree and honestly even the Tracer. I was hoping to see a spark of the old New York in their recent match against Washington. However, despite playing the dive style that this team made its name on, it wasn't the performance I know I and a lot of other NYXL fans were hoping to see. Like the Rain, this is definitely a very talented team and a flexible one. They've got a lot of potential, but we need to see them look at least competitive with a good team before being able to justify having them anywhere near the top of the standings. Coming in at number 6 are the Los Angeles Gladiators. With the roster and coaching staff on this team, I expect them to perform very well in hero pools. Creativity and strategic depth have always been hallmarks of this org, and they've built a roster with even deeper hero pools than before this season. As I mentioned in my last Power Rankings video, the real question of the Gladiators, for me, is not whether they will do well or not, but whether they will finally be able to establish themselves as an elite team, or are they doomed to spend a third consecutive season as the gatekeepers to the top of the standings. At number 5 are the Vancouver Titans. Vancouver have moved down ever so slightly in my rankings, the reason being the competition has leveled up. As much as Haxal is a highlight machine, the real strength of this team has always been the tank and support duos, and that hasn't changed. What has changed is just how strong the tank and support duos on other teams outside of the Shock has become. With multiple other rosters now matching the Titans in this regard, one naturally looks to the Vancouver DPS players, and honestly, that's where I think the weakness for this team might be. Outside of a couple comfort picks like Genji and Reaper and McCree for Haxal, Summon-Su and Stitch respectively, it's hard to say whether they'll be able to match up against the crazy talent the league now has, like XZ, Glista, and Edison, to name but a few. With that said, I really find it very hard to imagine a reality where this team falls out of the top 8. The synergy on this roster is incredible, all of the players have long track records of success, and I think head coach Pagion is criminally underrated. Coming in at number 4 are the Shanghai Dragons, the third and final team on this list who haven't moved, haven't played, and will have their segment replaced by I'm sorry, okay. Rising up one spot in my rankings to number 3 are the Paris Eternal. I'm going to start by right away addressing the green-horned elephant in the room, which is the fact that this team lost 3-0 to the Houston Outlaws. It's obvious that the team just did not have the correct read on the meta heading into that match. However, that for me just makes their upset over the Fusion all the more impressive. The fact that the Eternal were able to make adjustments that fast is honestly incredible. Against the Fusion, this team played the cleanest dive we have seen all season, without contest. The duo of No Smite and Hanbin on Winston and Devo was incredible all match long. I was singing the praises of the staff Paris have built beforehand, and I'm singing them more even now. Obviously, we've had 9K come over from the San Francisco Shock, and Coach Rush, who headed Korea's best team for many seasons, Element Mystic. Going forward, this team seems poised to remain a top contender. There is obviously danger that they come into a new hero pool meta and once again have the wrong read in their first match. However, I'm personally confident that that's something we are unlikely to see again. Moving up to number 2 in my rankings, despite having not played at all, are the San Francisco Shock. Now, the reason the Shock have moved up in my rankings is because I have seen hero balls now. I have taken some time to digest what I think it means for the game and the teams, and I think it's an environment that is going to suit the Shock right down to the ground. My big criticism of this team was how they played the May McCree style in their match against the Fuel, and that Sinatra especially looked very uncomfortable. However, if we're regularly going to have weeks where May isn't required, and what is required is a team that is intelligent and adaptable, I think the Shock are set to have another incredible season. Will it match the dominance they had last year? Very unlikely. But the experience on this team and their track record speak for themselves. I think on just about any composition outside of the Reinhardt May composition, they will be incredibly dangerous, and I look very forward to seeing them in however many years at this point it is until we see them. And finally, at number 1 is, you guessed it, the Philadelphia Fusion. It's really not hard for me to justify placing the Fusion at number 1. In both the eye test and in the stats, they've been the best team we have seen so far in the 2020 season. They have an incredibly talented and versatile roster that I still maintain might just be overall the most mechanically gifted in the entire league. Obviously, they lost recently against the Paris Eternal. However, that loss is not one I am penalising them for too harshly. If anything, it reaffirmed my faith in this team, and I'll explain why. The Fusion faced a Paris far different from the one they were expecting, the one that got 3-0'd by the Outlaws, and as a result, they got absolutely smashed in the first 2 maps of the series. It was what happened after those 2 maps that reaffirmed my belief in the Fusion being a championship contender this year. They stepped away in the halftime, they decided how to adapt, and they came back to take the game to a map 5, playing excellent Overwatch in those last 3 maps. Being able to adapt and come back when down 0-2 like that is a must-have for any elite team, and the Fusion definitely have it. They did lose on that final control map, Paris looking tighter overall on the Soldier Tracer composition. However, that exact pair of heroes is just about the only one Fusion's roster isn't really suited to right now, at least with Hisu not being eligible. So I expect the Fusion to look stronger in just about any other meta going forward. And that concludes my OWL2020 Week 5 Power Rankings discussion. Thank you as always if you made it all the way to the end here. If you've got an opinion different to mine, then feel free to drop a comment on my Twitter or this video, and let's have a discussion. Thanks again, and goodbye.